Hello everyone, I'm Javier Cifuentes-Faura from the University of Murcia in Spain. It's an honor to participate in this conference as a keynote speaker. Thank you very much to the organization for inviting me. We will talk about green economics with the lecture entitled Pollution and the Green Economy in Europe. This paper has been co-authored with two colleagues from Romania, Dr. Mihaela Simionescu and Dr. Madalena Radulescu. Today, environmental degradation, the depletion of natural resources, and global warming are some of the infinite problems facing the planet. With the aim of putting an end to this problem, in 2015 the United Nations enacted the 2030 Agenda, where 17 Sustainable Development Goals were decreed, which seek, among other things, to achieve affordable and clean energy, SDG 7, achieve sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, establish climate action, SDG 13, or protect the life of terrestrial ecosystems, SDG 15. These goals and policies put in place should help to improve the environment over the years and make the planet more sustainable, although much remains to be done. The production, consumption, and transport energy have significant impact on environment. Energy production, circulation, and use present environmental effects like climate change, waste generation, water waste, etc. Economic activities in energy industry have effects on global warming because of the pollution and deforestation. The fuel's combustion generates greenhouse emission, but electricity has no harmful effect on environment. However, renewable energy use and green technologies in energy industry might improve the quality of environment due to less pollution and methods related to industrial ecology. In developing countries, the benefits brought by manufacturing and especially export in this sector might be offset by the environmental degradation and health issues because of the pollution. In this context, clean production technologies are required. The transfer of green technologies and necessary technical skills enhance the efficiency of production in manufacturing by reducing the quantity of water, pollutant substance, and energy. Green investment portfolios, regulations to support friendly environmental investment, improvement in environmental regulation are other important solutions to mitigate the environmental impact of manufacturing in developing countries. Air pollution remains one of the major challenges for most of the European Union countries, including those located in Central and Eastern Europe (CEE). In this region, the main source of pollution is the burning of solid fuels for industrial and domestic heating purposes. The most important consequences of pollution are related to serious health issues. Considering these negative effects, European policy makes a struggle to reduce pollution that is a major cause also for climate change. Therefore, more targeted initiatives are necessary to identify the source of pollution and the most relevant factors to control it. There are industries that bring particularly important contribution to pollution in CEE countries. The environmental taxes seem not to be the most successful solution to reduce environmental degradation. Therefore, a deeper analysis should be made to investigate the connection between economic development and pollution, since in most cases the orientation to profit is more important for companies than environmental protection. The economic growth pollution nexus is based on environmental cuteness curve (EKC) that is also employed here in a specification that includes renewable energy consumption. The EKC has been extended to include other relevant variables, especially economic indicators like Index of Economic Freedom and Foreign Direct Investment. However, current challenges should be taken into consideration when the EKC is extended. The energy crisis has a significant impact on pollution, and we included electricity price in non-household consumers to check if this indicator reduces pollution or not. The actual energy crisis requires measures to ensure energy supply and optimal prices for energy consumers. The European Union established more targets to manage the energy crisis, reduce the high electricity and gas prices for companies and households, mitigate energy dependency, enhance green energy transition, and more security of gas supplies. High energy prices could be reduced by less electricity consumption, fixing a limit for the revenues of energy producers, cooperation from fossil fuels, business, etc. Given the importance of this topic for the CEE countries, the aim of this paper is to evaluate the impact of economic growth and electricity prices on pollution. Two proxies for pollution are considered: greenhouse gases (GHG) emissions and carbon dioxide emissions (CO2). The paper employs dynamic panel data models for the period 2007 and 2021 in the case of the 11 CEE states in the European Union for energy industry and manufacturing. The results indicate different patterns in the pollution growth nexus, but the electricity price for non-household consumers reduces pollution. The work employs panel data associated to the European Union member states located in Central and Eastern Europe: Czech Republic, Romania, Estonia, Croatia, Latvia, Slovak Republic, Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, and Slovenia. The dependent variable in the models is represented by a proxy for pollution in two specific sectors with significant contribution to this phenomenon: manufacturing and energy industry. The data set covers the period 2007-2021. The specification of the equation based on EKC is based on a polynomial function of order 2 that links the level of pollution measured by greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide emission with a proxy for economic growth at national level (GDP) and at sectoral level value added in industry and construction sector. A description of the variables used in the panel data models is made in the table. We employ greenhouse gases emission, carbon dioxide emissions, value added in industry and construction, gross domestic product, electricity price for non-house consumers, human development index, foreign direct investment, index of economic freedom, and renewable energy consumption. The research starts with two baseline models that links pollution, greenhouse emission, and CO2 emission in each sector: industry and manufacturing with GDP, or value-added industry with renewable energy consumption. Robustness check is ensured by adding more control variables: index of economic freedom, electricity price for non-household consumers, and foreign direct investment. The data series are considered in the natural logarithm to reduce multicollinearity between explanatory variables. Preliminary tests are used before the construction of the dynamic panel data models. The Besaran-City test is used to check for cross-sectional dependence, since this test is not affected by the sample dimension. This table reports the descriptive statistic and shows a large range of CO2 and greenhouse emission in energy industry compared to the level of pollution in manufacturing sector. The maximum increase in greenhouse emission and in CO2 emissions in the energy industry is reported in Estonia in 2013, while the lowest values were reached by Latvia in 2020. The highest growth of greenhouse emission in manufacturing was observed in Czech Republic in 2007, and the minimum growth in Hungary in 2012. Slovakia presented the maximum growth in 2011 in the case of CO2 emission in manufacturing. The minimum increase in CO2 in this sector was reached in Latvia 2016. Latvia reduced its pollution because of decline in industry after restoration of independence in 1991 and due to environmental legislation that promoted also specific environmental taxes. For the data series in natural logarithm, the matrix of correlation is computed, but no strong correlations were observed between the explanatory variables. This table suggests cross-sectional dependence only for GDP at 1% significant level. The homogeneity hypothesis is checked for value-added industry, CO2 in energy industry, greenhouse energy industry, and CO2 in manufacturing at 10% significant level, while heterogeneity is fulfilled for the rest of the series. The results of the SARAN CADF test depend on the number of lags. Therefore, the augmentation is made by adding 1 and 2 lags. This table indicates that the data series in level are stationary only for GDP and CO2 in manufacturing. Given the absence of co-integration between data series, the dynamic panel GMM estimation are considered. The results based on panel data models reveal important insights. First, there is a tendency of increase in the greenhouse emission in energy industry, while greenhouse emission in manufacturing tend to decrease in time. These results show that the environment policies in energy sector have not the expected impact on the environmental initiatives were not sufficient to manage the negative impact associated to the development of the energy sector. Hence, more efforts should be made to reduce greenhouse emission in energy sector. Second, opposite patterns are observed in explaining the variation of greenhouse emission in energy industry and manufacturing. The U pattern is observed in energy industry, which is in line with the previous observation that states the overall tendency of increasing the variation of greenhouse emissions. On the other hand, inverted U pattern is observed in manufacturing sector. In energy industry, renewable energy consumption significantly reduces the variation in greenhouse emission, while the impact was not significant in the case of manufacturing sector. Economic freedom has no impact on pollution in both industries, while variation for a direct investment, electricity price has a significant and negative influence on greenhouse emission in both cases. We have run models including Human Development Index variation in the models based on greenhouse emission, but a significant impact of this variable on greenhouse emission was not revealed. In the model with GDP, FDI significantly and negatively contribute on reducing greenhouse emission in energy industry and manufacturing industry. This impact is much stronger than the effect of the renewable energy consumption in reducing greenhouse emissions, which means that pollution haven hypothesis is validated for these 11 European Union member states. Energy prices for non-households is significantly and negatively related to greenhouse emissions, contributing to the reduction of greenhouse emissions both in energy industry and manufacturing industry. In the model with value added in industry, FDI also confirmed the pollution haven hypothesis, but the most negative impact of FDI of reducing greenhouse emissions can be seen in energy industry against manufacturing industry. Based on the results, it is also worth mentioning that renewable energy consumption plays an important role in reducing greenhouse emissions only in energy industry, not in the manufacturing one. This means that manufacturing industry still relies on traditional energy sources as fossil fuels and this is why the impact of renewable energy is not significant here. While in the energy sector, the share of renewable energy of total energy mix is higher, so the impact is significant and negative. When CO2 emissions in each industry are considered, an overall tendency of increasing the level of pollution is observed. The U pattern for energy industry and inverted U pattern for manufacturing is kept also for this proxy of pollution. Same shapes were achieved both in the models with greenhouse emissions and into the models with CO2 emissions. The inverted U-shape EKC we have achieved between GDP squared, and emissions for the manufacturing industry was demonstrated by many previous studies for many countries or large groups of developed or developing countries. Renewable energy consumption reduces the CO2 emissions in energy industry. In manufacturing, the renewable energy use has the capacity to reduce the CO2 only when we control for value added in industry. Foreign direct investment and electricity price determine the reduction in CO2 emissions in both sectors. In case of CO2 emissions, Human Development Index is significant only in the manufacturing industry for reducing carbon emissions, while renewable energy consumption is significant in both industries, but with a stronger negative impact on emissions in the energy industry sector. The impact of GDP on carbon emissions is larger in manufacturing sector than into the energy industry. On contrary, the impact of added value on carbon emissions is larger in the energy sector than in the manufacturing one. These results are opposite to the finding above where we determine the factors impacting on greenhouse emissions. So the overall activity is more polluting in energy industry and less polluting in manufacturing sector, while the industrial activity is more carbon polluting in the manufacturing sector and less carbon polluting in the energy one. Another important finding is the fact that renewable energy consumption decreases both greenhouse emissions and carbon emissions, and its impact is stronger in the energy sector than in the manufacturing industry if we include overall activity, namely GDP. Economic freedom was not found as being significant for greenhouse emission nor for carbon emission. Summarizing results, the most important factors impact on greenhouse or carbon emissions are economic growth and industrial output, followed by Human Development Index, which supports the decrease of carbon emissions but only manufacturing industry. Now we go with the main conclusion of this study. We have aimed to investigate the validity of EKC curve in energy industry and manufacturing industry in 11 European Union member states using GDP growth and GDP growth squared in one model and added value in industry as share of GDP and added value industry squared in another model. As dependent variable, we have also used two different variables as proxy for pollution, greenhouse emission and CO2 emissions. For each industry and for each of those two models, be it with GDP growth or added value in industry, we have estimated two different submodels, one including only renewable energy consumption and another one including renewable energy consumption but also other exogenous variables such as economic freedom index, foreign direct investment, human development index, and an energy price for non-household consumers. The results have shown that variables are not co-integrated in the long run. For estimations, we have used a dynamic panel GMM to deal with short dataset in the presence of no co-integration and cross-sectional dependence among the panel. Results demonstrate a U-shaped curve expressing the relation between GDP growth and emissions, greenhouse and CO2 in the energy sector, and an inverted U-shaped curve expressing the relation between added value in industry and emissions in the manufacturing sector. In all estimated models, GDP growth and added value in industry respectively display the largest impact on greenhouse and CO2 emissions. Renewable energy consumption exerts a negative impact on greenhouse and CO2 emissions in all estimated models. Economic freedom was not found to be significant in any of the models. Human Development Index displays the strongest impact after GDP growth in the models that include GDP, but it was not found to be significant for carbon emissions in the energy industry. Based on the results, we can elaborate some policy recommendations. The national authorities of those new European Union member states should implement economic policies and adapt their regulatory framework for stimulating the human development, and that means investigation in education and training, in research and development, and in the health sector. Financing all these areas requires large financial funds allocated by the government, and for achieving this goals, a public-private partnership is needed for training the labor force according to the market demands. Also, for attracting foreign direct investments, these states can rely on fiscal stimulus or incentives, because they need large financial funds for the above-mentioned sectors in order to improve also Human Development Index, needed for a developing sector such as manufacturing one. In this sector, where the labor force is low qualified, Human Development Index increase is essential for industrial output and also for achieving environmental targets. The governments should also support and promote renewable energy sources in production and consumption. That implies a large information process about the advantages of using this type of energy sources. The financial support available for promoting renewable energy sources into consumption. Governments should also allocate larger funds for research and development that can be used for a green innovations, economy, and energy transition. This can be also achieved in a public-private partnership frame. And this is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. You can see my email on the screen, so if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.